But yeah, so for everyone that's joined, I will be very surprised if most of you don't know who James is. But James, introduce yourself and Jaeger.
I started Jaeger a while ago now. It was when Bespoke was in its second iteration, and I was kind of moving away. I was moving more into a desk job. Missed working and making designing parts, upgrading things, the real nitty gritty tech stuff. So made Jaeger Precision. It's the JP is my initials, obviously James Parker, Jaeger Precision.
That
As
literally
from
just
the
twigged for me.
Has it really?
I
So
thought you were just a massive geek.
I am a massive geek,
Oh, that's all
but
right.
then
That's fine.
as I was thinking of a name, because I've had many different names over the years, as we spoke about earlier when I was doing a lot of PTW stuff. We used to go by FU53.
Mm.
That came about because it was like an old forum name of Fuse, because the CTWs always used to blow the fuses like straight away.
You
So
did a KCO2 kit, didn't you?
yes,
Daedalus.
yeah. So Rogueworks now has that
Mm.
original prototype.
I
They
remember that
bought
back
it.
in the day. I can't remember which forum it was on, but I saw it on one of the forums, and I was like, "This is shit hot."
The kit wasn't made by me. It was made by a company in the States.
Okay.
Was bringing it in and modifying it because they're not like a drop-in fit. Didn't make many of them. They were super expensive. I know Rogueworks had tried to get the kits from the US, maybe a few years ago.
Mm.
And then because I hadn't that rifle, that prototype that you would have saw, never got used ever. So
As generally goes the way of that. Doesn't it?
it was one of them things that you had it on the wall. I think I used to have it on the wall in the original Bespoke shop, and people used to look at it and go, "What the hell is that?" So I was talking to Rogueworks, and I was like, "Do you guys want this? Because it's probably going to benefit you having it more than me, because I don't do KCO2 stuff anymore." So
And they live and breathe it.
they live and breathe it, yeah.
They do.
So, but yeah, that's the JP comes from that, and the Jaeger bit comes from. It's kind of like a weird. It's a nerdy thing because the Jaegers were the big mechs in the what was the film, Pacific Rim?
Yeah, they're in Pacific Rim, and I think it's some Gundam reference as well.
Yeah, so I think it means hunter in German. And then that's where you'll see in the Jaeger the J is now like a Gundam-esque style.
Mm. Yep, your little logo's above your name in the live. People should be able to see that.
So yeah, that's Jaeger, and then it's just gone one step to another. Jaeger was always in the background. Obviously, had a website and never really did much with it. Perhaps put a few things on there. Then I started advertising my services like the machining, laser work, Cerakote, the suppressor foam, and there's always modules being added. And then when I moved away from Bespoke full time, that's when I'm like, right, I've got my day job now. Jaeger Precision is my obsession, and here we are.
So see if there's any comments for us. So that's James. That's Jaeger. I've known James for years. We were just in Discord chatting about how long we've known each other. And I'm offended that James didn't remember me when he was doing PTW work.
You was going to mention when you mentioned. Obviously, that's going back a long time. Like I wouldn't remember anything from then. But I don't know if you remember the PP19 that was built. Was it when Bespoke first started?
What, the one you built for me?
Yeah, I think so.
That was stolen, James.
Was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's the earliest gun I remember that wasn't obviously a bolty or anything like that. But yeah,
I remember when you moved. I don't know if it's your first warehouse or your second warehouse for the first iteration of Bespoke. But when I drove up and saw you, and you had just finished building and painting a custom Cryptek ASG, the Evo.
Yep.
Do you remember that? The tan sort of Cryptek one.
Yeah, a friend of mine now owns that.
And then I did some testing for you on the, because obviously I got the Striker, one of the first people to get the Striker, and I did obviously a load of the tech work and the blog on it. And then you obviously sent me your original chamber that a few of us had.
Of course, original conversations is what started Bespoke doing the short barrels, because you'd done something similar. And then I think the short barrel for the Striker was the first properly manufactured part I think I ever did.
And then we spoke about pistons and weighting and the barrel length, and then you come out with your piston, which people still ask for. And this was it Steel Tech, the springs you made as well?
The StelTech springs
StelTech.
and I can't remember the
ED1?
ED1 kits, yeah. Which, obviously we spoke about the short barrel. That was a very early thing. We manufactured the barrels. Not ASG. Aries copied the short barrel, which was the ASO2. They also completely ripped off the ED1 trigger kit to a degree, the way it worked. That was quite a big project, trying to use
the existing space.
Yeah, the trigger pack was cast, wasn't it? It's not like you could unbolt it and put something else on. So I worked with a big engineering firm in Birmingham about that. The engineer was one of these people that spoke in G code. So you could give him an idea, and he'd walk straight up to the CNC machine and start putting code in, like he was texting on a phone.
Just casually, just writing toolpaths like no tomorrow.
Yeah, just putting code in. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just coding the machine." When he was doing the short barrels, and I remember they put a short barrel off, which this 5-axis Mazak £500,000 machine made this first prototype barrel in, I want to say, like a minute. It was so quick. We pulled it off, checked the fitment, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, this is off there, this is off there." Back on the machine, couple of lines of G code, and then he nailed it. That was, how clever the guy was. But yeah, a lot of engineering went into that, and the one thing that Aries probably struggled copying was our one-piece cylinder. They tried to machine the one-piece cylinder like we did, and they didn't. They was having all kinds of issues like we had, because it's a very hard thing to do.
Well, they welded it. They didn't one-piece it properly. They welded
it. They did. They CNC machined it, and the machining was always off, or they'd forgot to machine the little section where the spring guide used to sit in. And then they moved to welding, which when the cylinder started working a little bit better, because they just have the tube, they put the cap on, they weld it, and it worked a lot better. So, but yeah, that was a good stressful 6 months, I would say, getting that right. And then we had issues. The part was quite complex, and eventually we decided to discontinue, because it was just costing a hell of a lot of money to try and get it right. So
I think we're going back to 3D printers, and obviously we will talk about the MDR, which is why I want here. But I think 3D printers have certainly given people a warped view of how much they think stuff costs. Like, obviously, you and me, we've worked with factories, we've made stuff. We know when people like I've every now and then someone message me, they'll have some obscure rifle. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, can you make me a wasp for a Well MB 4416?" And I'll be like, 4416. Right, that's a well clone that uses the TML96 setup. Right, okay. No one owns them. Oh, cool. Can you just make me one? I mean, if you want to pay for the mold for one cup, yeah, sure.
If you've got a couple of £1,000,
yeah, don't worry, I'll make you one. And then when you say it, they're like, "Well, no, I'll just get a machinist local to me to do it." Like, in England?
Okay.
Yep, you do that. So yeah, people.
See, I always loved getting stuff made in the UK. I don't think anything we manufactured ever was made overseas, and that was just solely for the reason was we had issues. I would literally get in a car, travel 30 miles, go straight to this huge engineering firm, and go right and sit down with people in front of them. And because you got to remember, these engineering firms, they make aerospace parts, they're very good at what they do, but trying to get over to them what airsoft is and how these things need to work. They have no background in that, so you literally have to talk to them like trying to explain it to like a child. And then when they can wrap their heads around sort of the mechanics and how these things work, then we started obviously getting somewhere. But yeah,
I've tried since day one to get stuff made in the UK, and obviously maybe now would be another time to approach, because obviously the volumes I sell now is different to obviously when I started. But the communication was always a problem, in terms of obviously trying to get some of those ideas over, especially when obviously a lot of my ideas were things that didn't exist, like weighted adjustable braked pistons weren't a thing. Like, I was the first person to do it. Obviously now everyone's followed suit, but I end up going to that. My original wasp was made by a friend in Poland. Like, my very first absolute prototype was made there, and then I tried to go to the UK, and I think I tried about 4 times, and it was either the price was extortionate, even if I tried to do things like if I committed to a really high volume with a pull off, so I'd say like I want 5,000 units, I guarantee that I will take those 5,000 units in 2 years. You sit them on a shelf and I'll just take them as and when I need them, sort of thing. No, they weren't interested, or the quality generally wasn't great in some instances. But I would love to be able to start getting stuff made, and there is a company I have been talking to in the UK, two in fact, and they might be able to make me use some of my smaller stuff, like low production run stuff, just because I would love to keep everything local, as you said, like to be able to go up and talk to these people, sit down, get Fusion open, be in a laptop in front of them and go through it would be massively advantageous than Europe, Asia, etc.
I have a much different mindset now and understanding of it than what I did back then. Like, I was very naive. I'd go in with an idea. They go, you want it like this? And I'd be like, yeah, just do that.
Mm.
And that would be my word. And then they go and do it. And if there was a problem, it was on me, which did happen quite a lot. We made kits for the extended mag release kits for the Chris Vector AEG.
Mm-hmm.
We had massive issues with that because, again, and a friend of mine sort of mentored me over the years. He's very clued up. He actually decommissions nuclear submarines for training, which is a whole conversation in itself. But
James Kermit?
No, you wouldn't know him.
Nah. So just because that's a very obscure career choice that I know a guy who does.
He's like a project manager now, so he just oversees stuff. They were decommissioning for training, but he always said to me, you need to have it in writing. You need to say, right, this is what I'm giving you. You need to be very exact, because then if a company, moves away from that drawing or that document that you give them, the ownership is on them. Which obviously now I would know when I get stuff made in the UK. Here is what I want. It's written down on a piece of paper as a specification. If you don't meet that specification, then you need to put it right. So,
yeah, I similar to you. I obviously started using design software, and I was comfortable doing the 3D design, like the step files. But then I didn't know how to transpose those into 2D CAD drawings. So for a period, I was relying on. I'd had a couple of friends that could do CAD stuff, or I'd rely on the factory. But then when there was an issue, it was that, is your drawing wrong or is my file wrong? And that went on for ages. So I remember I think I spent about 3 weeks just every evening just taking old projects I'd done and trying to 2D draw them, closing the project, and then starting with my drawing and then remaking it just for my drawing and trying to compare the two. And I did that with loads of different stuff until I got confident with the CAD drawings. So now when I send something to a factory, there's a materials list with all the tolerances, the threads, there'll be the step file, and then there'll be the 2D CAD drawings to go with it. And then I'll be like, don't make a mistake, because I can prove that you've done something wrong in loads of ways. But yeah,
that's definitely something I think I'd benefit now. Like if I knew all that, like back then, I think it would have been a lot more.
And knowing the value of things, like when you go to, like I've gone to companies back in the day, and they're like mechanics going around kicking your tire, like kicking your idea, like, oh yeah, you're gonna need 3 steel for that, but 3 steel, that doesn't, it's not as hard as 3-4, but it's that's easier, and you're just like, I just want it shiny and strong. Whereas now I'm like, I know I want that for that piece and that for that, and that specific coating, and I need that surface finish. And yeah, you just learn. And I've been lucky. I know people that do design and stuff, like obviously me and Hadron, Steve, obviously we've been friends for years. And there's a few other people that I talk to that, like Springer Custom Works, Pavel, he's a really nice guy, he's helped me out and sort of given me direction in the past. And yeah, it is nice to be able to, especially you'll appreciate it now, you've got a 3D printer, to be able to sit down, design something, go and print it, get your first sort of prototype and go, okay, it might not work, but I know I've got something here. This will work, and I know why it doesn't. Because 3D printing has definitely changed the game. Question for you, James. I'm gonna if this publishes to my stream, I'll be happy, because there you go.
Yes.
Did you see that? It worked. Yes. I'm evolving as a streamer. Yeah. So yeah, you can shorten that for a guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about work holding, but if it'll fit in the machines. I've done barrel stuff for a long time. So yeah, as long as it's nothing too complicated, it should be pretty straightforward.
And then another one come in. Oh, I can't believe this is working. You wouldn't. This sounds simple, but to get those to pop up on my stream was a bit of a dick. Oh, we're going 2 for 2. There you go. Another one for you.
The fusion grenades.
I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is? Have you made something and forgot you've made it?
Oh, the Torque Precision SFDFs.
Is that the one that looks like a flashbang?
Yeah.
They look cool.
So I think what the one he's talking about is where it was designed around a pouch where, as you grabbed it and pulled it, the pouch pulls the pin.
Oh, okay.
It went through a few iterations. The guy who designed it is a very good friend of mine. I don't know. They haven't done anything for a while. But the same guy is also the guy that's now decommissioning nuclear subs. So I imagine he's got a lot more on his plate. I think he's just had a big contract for like CBRN equipment or something like that. So he's a very busy chap.
Okay, well, that's all the questions for the moment. So let's get to the nitty gritty. Oh, sorry.
The MDR.
Oh, if the guy wants to contact you, I'm guessing he can just reach out to your Facebook page?
Facebook, Instagram, email. I'm not super quick on the responses sometimes just because, it gets a bit much when you get in like a few hundred messages. You look at it and you're like, oh, God, that's my evening. God, if I start now.
And you can never just do one. You're like, oh, that only took me a minute. I'll do another one. Oh, yeah, that was only a couple of minutes. I've still got time. And then it's 3 a.m. and you're still answering questions about what mag fits in what gun. And you're like, oh, how did I fall so low? But the burning question is, and obviously people that know you are going to know your opinion on this, but the MDR, what is the good, the bad, and the ugly? So with this is your MDR, right? On the screen?
That is my MDR, yeah. That's the original one, which started the whole MDR thing with Jaeger because I bought it. I wasn't going to buy it. I'd kind of forgotten about it. You know, we've been waiting for this for like, 6-8 years, something like that.
It's been a long time.
I do actually have the image of the prototype gearbox that they had, I think maybe at IWA. You'll probably have seen it as well. And it was funny because I found it on my computer the other day and I was like, this doesn't actually look too different to the production. Like,
no, even the coloring's the same.
Where's the 8 years? You know, but
I think it was the stock. I think stock molds are obviously an absolute pain, and obviously there's a few pieces that make that up. But
yeah, the whole MDR thing started with me. I just bought one. I think I was talking to Hadron at the time, and he was like, "Oh, you know, I think Longbow had some in." He said, "But they'd all been bought."
Longbow's in the chat. Hello, Jason. He's in there.
Hi, Jason. So I think Jason had sold his out, but Hadron was like, "Oh, Land Warrior getting some in, I think, in the next week or so." So I just went and pre-ordered, and then it turned out it took a little bit longer. The gun got to me, and I think this is where one of those experience things comes in, because when I was reviewing it, and you can watch all this on YouTube, I fire the gun and I'm like, that's not right. Like, I probably have a bit more of a keener ear to this stuff than a lot of people because of the amount that I've worked on over the years. And it sounded, I think I said in the video, it sounded a lot like that when Aries have the same issue where the bevel gear, they shim it too low. So I was like, that's where the scratchiness is coming from, because it's putting sidewards load on the forgive my crude explanation here, but it's putting load on the side of the pinion, which is pushing it down. So I started thinking, pulling it apart. The gun had probably been apart about 7 times. Just, having look here and there, because I had a wobbly receiver as well, which I've still got, but it's much less. It's not as bad as it was, thanks to Jason sending me one of these little rubber grommets. But I looked at it, I thought, right, this is an issue, and the bevel gear can't come up any higher because of the way that the gears were made. It's off spec, and this probably comes from. I mean, I'm not throwing any shade at Silverback, but they are, to me, they're a bolt action manufacturer. They make.
Well, they've only made one AEG, which was the Bison.
Which I don't think they made. I think it was manufactured overseas in like Asia. I'm sure someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but okay. I don't think they had. I don't think They definitely didn't build it from the ground up like the Silverback MDR.
Yeah.
So they're probably not looking for these certain things, and it's no fault of their own. The gun still works. And then, of course, I received a lot of bad, shall we say, backlash of my opinion of the MDR. You know, people saying I didn't know what I was talking about. The MDR sounds fine. And that's when I point I thought, you know what? I'm going to fix it. I'm going to prove it on video. And I put up a video, and it was basically, it was cut. So the gearbox was firing before and then after. And then I was putting it before and after so people could literally hear that pitch difference in the gearbox. Which, of course, you know, again, people were saying, you know, it sounds bad because the gearbox is close to your head. And I'm like, no, I'm not having any of that. This just isn't right. This is a £600 rifle. I wasn't going to return it. You know, I tried to put a thing through Land Warrior about getting that fixed and the wobbly receiver. You know, I never heard anything back from them. So it was like, right, it's on me. I've opened the gun. Let's fix it. So I put the bevel gear in a lathe and I started trimming material off. So basically what that would do is it would raise the ceiling where the bevel gear could sit. I actually have one in front of me here. So the bevel gear, this one is one that's been machined for a customer. I'm sorry if this blurs it out. But you're basically taking material off the top here so that the bevel gear can move up and out the way of the motor. And again, coming from Aries, bad quality control, this was something that I'd always dealt with. So I did that, got the gun firing nice and smooth, and then, of course, put it up in the MDR Facebook page, and then that's where the absolute whirlwind started that hasn't stopped till today.
Well, this picture is what a lot of people are coming to, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the gearboxes that have been done. So it's not a cheap, for those that have bought a £600 rifle, the base package tuning package, if you want to call it that, is not a cheap sum for someone that's just spent £600. But for what, and I've always tried to stress this because obviously there's been those that have criticised the work. For what you're getting in that service, it's almost too cheap. Because if you take your gun to someone, you go, right, I want an AG serviced. What would you say is the average cost of a service or an engineer fee?
I'd probably say 50 quid is the standard, sort of an hour and a half, and they'll change an O-ring and relube your gears, maybe do your AOE, etc. But that'd be your basic. And I'd say 50 odd quid would probably be for like the most basic, not changing a single part or doing any machine work, just taking it apart, relubing it, aligning, putting it back together.
So that is, so a gearbox comes in, it gets stripped apart, everything gets measured. Once I'm happy with what the measurements, I'll note it down of what's going to be done to that specific serial number, which again is a ridiculously complicated thing to track, especially when you've got 12 of them at any one time on the bench. So again, right, here's the gearbox, it's all measured. What happens now? We completely strip it down. I take the casing and the gear into the workshop. The gear gets machined to the specification of the gearbox, which they're usually within, you know, a couple of 0.01 mil of each other. So they're not always massively off compared to each other, but there is a slight difference. And once that gear's machined, that gets put to one side. The casing then gets split in two. The right side of the casing, which you can see on the top there, gets put in a milling machine, and the Silverback, the embossed, or the Silverback logo that sticks out, says Silverback Airsoft on it, that gets milled off. So that gets flattened. Once that's flattened, they get obviously treated, degreased, put in an acetone bath, sandblasted, Cerakoted. Once they're Cerakoted, they come back in, the gearbox gets assembled and shimmed. Once the gearbox is shimmed, the cylinder gets taken apart, that gets done, put back in, always checking for various issues that these MDR gearboxes have. Then it gets put back together, then it goes into the laser and then gets etched with my logo, their serial number, and then the date of which the gearbox was completed. So once you think about all that, that £80 really isn't going far, and the only reason that it can be done for that amount is by when a gearbox comes in, a weight. And this is why, a lot of those that send them in to me get a bit touchy with the lead times. If I was to do that gearbox just as one gearbox, I'd be losing money.
Well,
So
the
it'd be
setup of doing that every time would be pointless,
yeah.
wouldn't it? At least if you can, as you said, if you can do 12 and get them all done and coated and get a jig set up to have all of them done so you can do one pass of the laser rather than taking it off. Yeah, you've streamlined it.
If you're if you were saying, right, don't even take into account my time, so the labour charge of it, if I did one gearbox on its own and sent it out to a customer, I would lose about £30. So that's the that's the problem that there is. So what I'll do is I'll wait, and then I'll get I used to do it in batches of 12. I now do it in batches of 6, just because having 24 casing or 24 half casings gets very chaotic. So I'll get a batch of 6. Once that batch of 6 fills up, that process gets done, and then only then it obviously pays for itself and then earns a tiny amount for obviously the website. So,
but I mean, it's good you're able to offer it, because I'm not, like, full transparency, I'm not an MDR owner. I liked it. I saw it every time I've been to IWA. I've seen different stages of where they were in obviously the process. But I'm not an AEG fan. I do like it, and if I was to get an AEG, it's the kind of thing I would get. I like the style of it. I do like bullpups. But I have seen numerous problems with it. Like, it is... And, it's one of those things, like, it's their first, as you said, their first commercially released gearbox-related product, so there's bound to be issues. I mean, people seem to forget how bad the SRS was when that came out. Like, the first SRSs with a push bolt were borderline dangerous.
I said this on multiple videos as well. I was like, honestly, if they're out there listening, thinking, "Oh, what is this guy? He's trashing our product. He's earning money on, doing this service, saying that the gun's no good out the box." They could send me a message tomorrow or today and go, "Look, we're aware of the issues. How about we somehow get you to us, and we'll go through everything and we'll make it an exponentially better product." I wouldn't even charge them for the time. I'd just jump on obviously let them pay the travel. I'd go out there and I'd sort it with them, because I'm passionate about it. And the whole reason you could do this service a lot cheaper if you didn't machine off the Silverback Airsoft logo, if you didn't Cerakote it, if you didn't laser etch it. But that is the icing on the cake, which then...
Well, that's your brand, right? That is your signature.
Yeah, it's the brand. And then, because I was thinking as well, coming back from PTW era, and if anybody out there knows about Tackleberry doing the PTWs, his name was everything. So when you were buying a PTW second hand, it was like, oh, was it Tackleberry?
Yeah, was it tacked?
So now people don't have to second guess, because they can prove it. Not only does the gearbox look different in terms of aesthetics in color, it's laser etched with your serial number on, so it matches the rifle. So you come to sell it, you go, right, it's had this service, here's the proof, the serial numbers match. I was trying to keep a database of every serial number that came in, and I do have a long list of this serial number came in. And for example, you go, right, like 756 on the screen, 756, bad bevel gear alignment, the gears weren't shimmed correctly, so there's grindiness between the spur and the sector. Some have loose, well, pretty much all of them have loose screws. There's one gearbox I had where the screw was like 6mm out of the thread. They haven't even put it in. Over greasing issues, cylinder, piston heads, all that stuff being loose. So there's a long list of what could be wrong per gun or per serial number. And then I was getting like a database, and I was putting it up on the website and going, right, here's the serial number, this is what was wrong with it, and this is what's been rectified. And then it took off like on an almost vertical path, to the point where I literally don't have the time. So there's so many gearboxes waiting to be done that any spare time that I get is trying to get them done and out the door, rather than, logging down and putting that data onto the website.
See, I don't think there's, going back to obviously people get defensive. People, and not just with this, obviously with various things, people spend a lot of money and they it's almost like they feel embarrassed to admit they've got a problem with that thing that they've spent money on, and they just get super defensive, don't they? Like, I saw it on the groups of some of your videos, some of the comments, people almost get irate over it, and you're like, I'm offering you a service to actually help you have a product that works like it's sort of meant to, I guess, to a degree. But I suppose you're always going to get that.
I did get some sketchy emails. Obviously, I don't really want to
No,
go into that.
yeah,
but,
everyone knows who it is.
And saying I was hurting their businesses and whatnot. But honestly, I don't care. I think with a lot of the time, and I think why Bespoke eventually did become very successful in its second iteration was I was just straight with people. If someone called me up and said, right, I'm thinking about getting XYZ, what do you think? If they were in the shop talking to person to person, I would tell them exactly what's wrong with it. And more often than not, I'd probably say more than 80% of the time, if I tried to tell a customer all the bad things about a product and saying, look, this is what's going to happen, they would buy it anyway because their heart's set on it already. You've told them all the bad stuff and they've gone, right, I haven't come in here and been absolutely, I don't know if I could swear on your stream or not.
Yeah,
but,
swear away.
Bullshitted and going to go away and find issue and come back. You've told me what it is. I know what to expect. And I think people really do appreciate the honesty. And that's what I've done.
It is about managing expectations. Like, that is, obviously you've run a shop, I've run a shop. So, and well, obviously we were talking before the stream about transparency. And it's like how you handle a problem as well. Like, I've had problems in the past with like really early products where I've made a silly mistake, or like as simple as I forgot to include something. I built like 50 things and forgot to include like a particular part. And I didn't throw my toys out the pram or bury my head. I just said, I'm just human. I've packed and QC'd this all myself, and I've made a silly mistake, and I'm gonna lose money posting it, but this has happened. If you're effective, just reach out and I will look after you. And people might get a bit inconvenienced by that, and they might be like, I really wanted it for this weekend. But ultimately, they still want the product, and you've given them a genuine response. It's when you go, I've got a problem with this, and individuals or companies, firstly, it's your fault. The default is always you've done something wrong, or it's a one-off, or ghosting.
Do you remember when Action Army released the Striker Hop unit?
The one that didn't fit in the outer barrel, because Striker outer barrels aren't concentric all the way along.
Well, it fit the standard outer barrel because it had the space, but when we machined the short barrels, we obviously removed that tolerance because it was like, why is there this big gap? We want to make it nice and tight so nothing moves. And when we shipped all those barrels out, Action Army released the hop unit. It didn't fit our barrel because it was machined a different way. And that was when I said to everybody, look, send me the barrel back and I'll send you a brand new one. We've just done version 2. It's come off the machines and we'll send it out for you free of charge. And I'm pretty sure you've done the same. Well, you might not have made the mistakes like I did, but...
Oh, no, I've made mistakes.
It's one of the things where, it's a problem and we'll fix it, so...
Yeah, if someone tells you that they haven't gone through prototypes or they haven't made mistakes, then they're just not telling the truth. Like, I've made... What was I doing? I did something recently. I was working on... Not recently, a few months back, I was revisiting an old project. And I sent a file to the factory, and they sent me some drawings back, and I was like, yep, absolutely fine. Week went past, and I thought, there was something I needed to ask them. So I went back and I messaged them, and they're like, okay, yeah, not a problem. It was through like, I think it was through with a particular thread pitch. And they said, it's this. And I was, no, it's counterclockwise, and it's this pitch. It's like a 0.75, not a 1. And they're like, okay, brilliant. Can you just confirm the file again? And they sent me the file again, and I was like, no, it's this one, because I changed the thread. And basically, I had simply just got version control mixed up, and I'd made a change on this one and made the thread change on this one, but not updated this one with the other change I did. So when I got a prototype, basically a thread was completely wrong in it, and that was like 400 quid gone. And then I'm like, I haven't got the money to carry on with that project until I sell some of the other projects I've done. And yeah,
it was like when we were discussing the other day about that hop arm I was doing for the AKM. And during our discussion, I was realizing like I was on version 4 or 5, and then just spitballing with you on Messenger, I was like, oh, actually, I've just noticed another thing that's wrong. So like, and then I think I hit the printer, didn't I? And then I was still talking to you. The printer was going. I was like,
a bit more
I've just
material
noticed something else.
Yeah,
I could have.
me and Steve. I don't know if you watched the podcast of me and Steve, but he was working on the Loki, and I was helping out with the manufacturing side of things, and we were bouncing ideas, and I obviously had one to test, and we were struggling with a factory that, like, they would, for some reason, like one half would ever so slightly be off. And we were talking, and obviously he'd looked at this design for hours. I'd been looking at it, and I remember sitting there, and we were just on a Skype chat, and we had it up on the screen, and I was like, "Why have we split into two, Steve?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "The factory we're using, I know, can make that one piece. Why have you split into? It doesn't need to be clamshell. If we change this, we can put it in from one end, secure it like this, and you've saved your machining costs, and it'll all be the same." And he was just like, "Hang up." And obviously we went away and joked about it, and that obviously, but
that
equally,
hop unit is like a masterpiece. I can't praise that hop unit anymore, and again, which I think has caused me to be on the bad praises of other people that produce parts, but it really is. You can tell, and I'm pretty sure I said this in my video when I was fitting it to my AP. You can just tell that someone's took the time to look at it and go, right, yeah, it's good, but wouldn't it be? And I'm pretty sure that's probably when you thought, oh, let's do it one piece. You don't see that just taking it out of the box and looking at it. It was obviously a conversation with Hadron where he was telling me about it, and I was like, wow, it's just blown my mind. So yeah, it is very good. So kudos to that. It's very, very good product indeed.
No, Steve's a very, very talented man. Very humble as well. Like he's not above criticisms to his products if there's ever a problem, or taking the time to help people with it. He's just, we've spoke to him. He's just a lovely guy. Generally, is really good. And yeah, obviously there's people out there that have same situation as me where they have taken advantage of his good nature and ideas for their own commercial benefit. But such is life. But going back to the the MDR, so we spoke about the issues and stuff. What are the positives? Like how, as a platform, there's obviously potential, right? Like I've seen some videos of people that have got theirs back, or they've done some work themselves, and it looks like a solid platform. Like to be able to lift heavy weights, it's got a decent cylinder volume compared to like a standard V2.
Yeah, there is. They've done a good job almost with the hop unit. It was so close, but again, which is why I do the nubs for the MDR, was noticing that as you were adjusting the hop, it would cant the nub to one side, so you'd almost have to turn it past and back to like bring it back center. It's just little things. It's nothing outrageous. It would have really pleased me if they'd just made it, a standard AG barrel and hot rubber. Why they do it just slightly different to annoy everybody, I'm not sure. But that being said, I've still got the standard barrel and hop rubber that came in it, because at the moment I don't really see an issue in sort of changing it. But
have you tried any more rubbers in it yet? I mean, I don't expect mine to fit because obviously my lips are tapered specifically for a standard AEG chamber. But I think Steve tried it in his, and I think it was alright in his.
Yeah, I kind of want to eventually do the barrel and the rubber, but I've sort of parked the MDR for now because obviously got massively into the MWS and AKM bits again. But then I started working on the short front end, which again was because I couldn't get the micro. I wanted the micron handguard, which you can only get from the States. I tried every avenue trying to get one, trying to find someone in the US that could buy one and send it over to me.
Is it what's that? Is it protected? Whatever the thing is.
Yeah, it's like ITAR restricted to some degree.
It, yeah, which seems madness considering it's just a handguard. But
yeah, it makes no sense whatsoever. But that's when I started working on what we call the nano handguard.
Is this the one I've seen?
Yeah, so it's like the original handguard, just much smaller.
Have you shown anyone that yet?
I think so.
Oh, if you haven't seen it, guys, it's tasty. I saw it. Generally, if I got an MDR, I'd want it as small as possible.
It's not for everybody, but you know me. I like short barrels on everything. Unless I really need to get the velocity and volume out the barrel, I'll always fit short barrels in a lot of stuff. A lot of my builds are over volume to a degree. So over.
I was going to say the whole voluming thing. This all stemmed from literally about 4 people on an old forum, and people still swear by it today, but it's a lot simpler and the numbers are a lot different to what people think they are. It's like not many people are actually being over volumed really doesn't affect performance a huge amount in terms of negative performance. It massively increases his muzzle report though. Have you seen that teeny VSR I've built? Like the foldy one that's got a 133mm barrel. You've built snipers. Getting a teeny barrel, 133mm barrel over like 1.5 joules without using stupid springs is quite tough, right? That VSR I've got is using Flamingo, a barrel I've got made at 133, my VSR hop unit in TDC, and a custom ported cylinder that I've made a little jig for that I do for my builds. And that's on an M150, and that's at 1.9 joules on a 4.8. And obviously I could put an M16 or some spacers in. And that is ported to an almost basic 2-to-1 ratio. Because a lot of it is actually about, realistically, a 4... I think I've got an Excel spreadsheet somewhere. But a 4.8 in a 430 VSR barrel is in that barrel from the point you pull that trigger till it's left for something like a 16th of a second. That air is gone. It's gone. It's gone miles before that baby's gone. Like, even when people think they've undervolumed, you have to have a lot of real lack of air to undervolume. Like, even the standard striker is only on the cusp of being undervolumed. The ASO2 is obviously pretty much perfect for what it is. But yeah, the volume is... Yeah, I could rant about that.
It's just one of those personal... I was saying this, again, I have a lot of personal opinions. I did an MDR not long ago, which was... which call it pre-cocked. So the guy wanted the magnet on the other side, wanted it pre-cocking. I said, I don't really see the point. The gun's responsive enough anyway. You're not going to gain anything from that millisecond of where it's held back, apart from changing the way the gearbox is timed, because, you know, it's loaded the round and it's sat there waiting. And, you know, massive uproar. Don't want talking about, you know, in regards to pre-cock. I was like, guys, it's just my opinion on the MDR. It's not how I would run it. I'd want it reliable, coming back from a Systema background. I don't really see the point in it. But again, with the over volume, I run my guns, which was going to be my next point actually. I over volley them, short barrels. There's a massive crack of air that comes out, which again is very loud. But I always run my short builds with suppressors, always. Which it sounds daft, but if you're running an AEG and you're over voluming at a very short barrel, and then you put a suppressor on the end, you can actually make it that the suppressor actually does something. You know, compared to always putting a suppressor on an AEG, and people say, oh, it doesn't really change because all the noise is from behind it. But it's just one of those personal things that I've always done. Yes, there's many ways to skin a cat, and I'm sure people could make more efficient setups than I could. Which again, when I built my TAP 41, I was talking to you. I was having massive issues with it, and I wanted it short. You know, I got the short triangular barrel, and that's when I bought your piston for it. I think it was. And I was saying to you, I was like, "This is the barrel length I'm running," and you were like, "Right, set it up with this weight, with this air brake." I think it was the short one or something. And going off your recommendation for that TAP 41, it just completely changed the rifle to the point then where I was like, bloody hell, I can actually use this now. So it's just about...
I think it goes to the information thing is, I think a lot of people have this, they have theory and they try and say, well, the math says this. And it's like you have theory, there's a term, it's like theory and practicality, which is basically where something should do something but actually doesn't do it in real life. Like a bee shouldn't be able to fly mathematically, but it does, and it bumbles around and it shows it in everyone's face. But I think with airsoft there's a lot of old stuff. Like, do you remember, like this, obviously you've got a Wasp, you know about the air brakes and things and what they do, their purpose, which still a lot of people don't, and that's great. People don't need to know. They want to know what the effect is, not why it does what it does. You remember this. You buy a VSR 10 years pre-Wasp, let's just say pre-Wasp, so 10 years ago. What did everyone do? Swiss cheese, cut the air brake off, and Swiss cheese their piston to make it as light as possible. Now what are we doing? Oh, we're putting air brakes on and we're actually matching volumes and we're adding weights. And yeah, it is funny how knowledge changes, because half the stuff we talk about in 10 years' time, someone will come along and be like, those pair didn't have a fucking clue what they were talking about.
Yeah,
And we'll still be arguing, going, yeah, we do. Absolutely do.
again, it was something that when Silverback did what did they call it, the 100% volume cylinder for the MDR? It
Yeah.
comes with a 75%, which again, to me, it was a way to sell upgrade parts. The cylinders aren't massively cheap, and I did a video where I shot all different BB weights from I think like a 0.2 to a 0.48, I think it was. And then I changed the cylinder over to the 100% cylinder. I did the exact same test, and the result difference was so marginal that, to be honest, it didn't really make any difference. Perhaps we just had a little bit of more air come out the barrel when it was finished. But, in terms of the velocity of the rounds that were coming out, no difference, really.
Yeah, the whole dual thing's just another strange one. Like, an interesting one for you to test. Have you got any air rifle type chronos? Like the scans where they're like that shape and you shoot through them rather than just like a normal small chrono.
To hand, no.
Shoot a 4 at the chrono at point blank. Shoot the same 4 at 5 meters and at 10 meters and at 20 meters, and then try other weights. And I'm not going to ruin the surprise, but I think there'll be a point of where you'll do it and you'll be like, that's counter to what most people think. And then you'll replicate it with something else and you'll be like, oh, that's also strange. But
So it's not like the old what's his name from First Early saying that 20 meters away from the rifle, the round's still accelerated.
Well, actually, I wouldn't. 20 meters, probably not. But there is a point, because obviously, all the time that BB is in the barrel, it's accelerating. And I've got a spreadsheet where to work out my builds, you basically work out how long that BB is in there for, how long it's in the barrel for, because obviously it's accelerating. You've gone from stationary to moving. The second it hits, let's say, unrestricted air, so when it's out of the barrel and it's hitting static air, obviously it's got a force against it, so it will start to slow down, but it's still wanting to accelerate. So all that happens is that acceleration will slow down the more the external forces push upon it. But at the point of the chrono, there is no external force. It's immediately left, so you're picking it up at a point where it's still potentially accelerating, especially on a heavy BB, because it's carrying momentum. And this is why weighted pistons work. It isn't necessarily the weight that is the magic. It's the momentum that it's carrying with that air, because obviously that air is going through a small nozzle. If you try and push air through a small nozzle and you lightly tap it and you've got no real pressure, you're not going to get much power here. Whereas if you force that air, which obviously a spring is one way of doing it, but if you use a heavy spring with a light piston, you get bounce. You get bounce, which I've shown in some videos before, where on an SRS it's really good to show it, but the piston will do this and then it stops. So it slams, it bounces, and it stops. A heavy piston pushes through that. It's got that weight and momentum, so you're not actually wasting a load of air past the BB or bouncing and getting inconsistency. You're using the momentum, and obviously you've got power curves of different springs and stuff. But yeah, I could ramble on for ages with that. I just gave up talking to people about it because everyone steals my ideas. So now I just keep it all to myself and everyone misses out. Well, obviously I'll talk to you and Steve and other like designers and stuff, but yeah, I'm not as free with my information.
Do you think it's going to be long before we start seeing weighted pistons in electric rifles?
The problem you have there is they don't use a sear, so you're relying on a lot of moving parts to grab a lot of different areas, and you're going to have something that's wanting to go this way while simultaneously, as it's finished that, it's wanting to be pulled back again. So you're going to get a lot of rocking. So I think it's possible.
Because technically, if you think about it, the lighter the piston, the more risk you have in certain setups would be, because with a sear, you're releasing it, and then until you charge that rifle again, it's not going to go anywhere. But with an AEG, obviously, that gear is going to be coming round at the same speed it did when it left the piston. So a lighter piston, could you theoretically get, the gears picking it up before, if it's got enough resistance, Obviously, you're relying on a very good air seal to sort of give that. And again, with AEGs, you've got a much smaller amount of travel compared to like a bolt action. But
Potentially, but what you'll find is a lot of AEG nozzles are wide bore nozzles. They've got quite a large opening. And I think someone way back when said, "Oh, we can't have a narrow opening." Even though if we had a narrow opening and a heavier piston, we could probably get more power out of the same spring. You run that risk of that air cushion is there, and the two ways you're going to force air through that gap is make the gap bigger, so there's less resistance, or have the gap smaller, but you need momentum to really build that, because obviously it's PSI, right? You're building up pressure of that air in that space while it's trying to go through that hole. I think it's possible. If you were to do it on something that was locked to semi, I think you'd have potential there, because it would be always completing a full cycle, and even if there was a bounce, you've obviously got that section of the gear where there is no teeth, where it's just going to be released and not do anything. On fully auto, you've got that potential for the timing to basically be ever so slightly out. But also air braked AEG pistons. I know Jaeger Precision has made some, and there's been a few others that have dotted around for the years. And the problem with that is the same thing. Obviously, when you use a brake, you're purposefully making an air cushion, right? You're using that blockage, that air cushion to dampen the blow, which is obviously going to be, your gear's going to want to do its full travel, whereas that piston hasn't done a full travel. It's hit that cushion before it can complete its movement. So I think you're going to have shredded gears on something where you're going to try and do either spam semi-auto or full auto.
Wasn't necessarily saying that it should be done.
No, but try it. This is how we find new stuff, right?
I think that companies might try and start selling heavy pistons as an upgrade and not really doing the science beforehand.
Oh, there's companies out there doing it now. Like, there's a few companies out there. Like, no one's ever asked me, or a few clever people have asked me, why are they all 60, 90, and 120? There's a very long answer to it, but the short answer is because I did a lot of testing before everyone jumped on this bandwagon. And I tell you what, I did a poll ages ago asking everyone, what weights are they using? All these fancy, well, say fancy, I shouldn't take the piss because obviously it's my product, but there's obviously these products out there that have these slightly more adjustable amounts. Do you know where everyone lands? 60, 90, and 120. Because generally the barrel sizes of all available snipers sit at lengths that work at those weights. So it just doesn't change, and a lot of it's predictable. Like if people are going to go for a G-spec, they're going for a 303mm barrel, right? In a VSR.
In our ED1 kit that we did for the Striker, we found that out accidentally. It was like a happy mistake. It was because we machined it out of stainless. I think it was 303 or 304, can't quite remember, or 316. It was right on 59 grams.
Yeah, I remember we spoke about it.
Yeah, it was like, why is this doing? Why are we getting these results? And it was just then we started experimenting with weight of piston, and it just so happened that because of the material that we used for the kit, for the power that we set it for, it was just bang on. It was just, that's what it needed to be, which was just under 60 grams.
Because like with the weights, it's obviously just adding a weight is one part of it, but you can, like, it varies. Like you can have you've made springs. To be honest, you pick a brand. We won't single any out, but let's say we had Modify, right? 13mm spring, M150. I could get 10 of those, and every single one will be different. And it could be vastly different. Some could be 5-10% different. So obviously, that 10% difference will then change what weight you need to use, what brake you need to use to a degree. And if it's different because the way it's stretched out, or if it's different because it's somehow got a different coil count, or the squish sections higher or further away from the middle, that spring curve, that power curve, changes everything. That's why you can have two M150 rated springs from two different brands, but if one's linear, one's non-linear, or one's got like the pre-compressed bit at the bottom, it drastically changes what you need to do. Which is why I always say, like, and the same as you obviously set every gun up to how you want it. You don't just read on the internet, oh, I've got this barrel, so I'm just going to make sure everything is this list of parts. You would common sense test it. And I think that's what, going right back to your point about people paying for your gearbox thing, people are paying for the convenience and the knowledge of that.
Yeah.
And segueing back into, Jaeger still does these gearbox builds if you would like to get them done.
Just don't ask me when it's going to be ready.
Yeah, you're allowed to say two. You're allowed to send 2 messages. Please, can I have this? And I've paid. And then you just wait until it's done.
Do you know,
then you'd be happy.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing now, but because I don't rely on Jaeger to sustain me, I have a full-time job anyway. This is like an obsession sort of side thing. And I have done it, people that have really pushed my buttons. And what always gets me, that when someone sends you a message and then you get just a question mark.
And
they'll just post a question mark multiple times. Honestly, I'll just delete your message. I'll just never deal with you, because I don't, I'm sure you'd have had it. I just don't need the extra stress. So those that are, don't get me wrong, it takes a very special kind of someone to get to that point. But it's pushing and pushing and pushing. I understand, I've been an airsofter for a long time. I used to not be a very patient person at all. I think being in the airsoft industry for a long time now has sort of made me more of a patient person with, let's say I go and buy something off a company, I'm going to give them a lot more time than what I used to, because I understand what it can be like. So yeah, it's a pain. People are very eager to get their things back, and obviously we started working with Jason at Longbow, and Jason has been very patient with me as well. Sometimes, especially with the amount of gearboxes I've been doing recently, you just get burnt out.
It's a tedious job. I cannot, I'm good at a lot of things in life, and equally there's a few things I'm very bad at. AEGs, not even upgrading. I could take one apart, and I do not have the patience to put it back together. I'll take a VSR apart 20 times a day to get it perfect, or any sniper rifle. But an AEG, I just open it, and I immediately have probably forgotten that there was a spring I should have been keeping an eye out, and then it just goes, and I just go, well, I'll be HPAing you then. And then that's that. That N7, the N7 kits are definitely something I recommend. And I made a little alignment kit for mine, because no one else seemed... There is a kits out there, but no one made it for the engine I've got. And night and day difference. Just chop a gearbox in half, shove this alignment kit on it. Job done. Don't worry, your nozzle's aligned. Everything works. Because that was annoying. That's the kind of thing I'd...
Yeah.
If... I generally won't get stuff done by other people because I'm too arrogant and I feel like I've failed. But I think there are some things where I would just go, if I wanted an AEG, I would just go, I'd send it to you or Luke. You're the only 2 people that I'd be like, I trust you. If it takes a long time, it's because you've done a very good job. And I wouldn't complain. I'd happily send it to either of you.
To be honest, I do get a lot of business where people have sent, guns to wherever, and then you get to pick up from where that company or individuals left off, and now you have to fix their issues as well as making it what it should be. It can be annoying, but yeah, it's one of the things. Like with the YouTube stuff as well, I think
you're smashing that, by the way. Well done on your YouTube.
I haven't been recently. Well. I haven't been recently, just because I've been posting a video every day since August last year, and I think maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, I think eventually your body just takes over. So I'd get home every day and I'd be really eager to do more content, and I wasn't slowing down. And even James was saying to me, he's like, I don't know how you're doing it every day and finding something relevant to talk about. And I was like, oh, it's easy because it's just me talking out loud as I'm doing bits and pieces. But just maybe a couple of weeks ago, I just hit this wall, and I just sat down. I just did not want to do anything, and I couldn't force myself to do anything. And I think it is maybe perhaps being burnt out or something. I don't know. So there has been a few weeks where I haven't put anything on there, and it's just because and I said this to James, I was like, he's like, don't feel like you need to do it. Just do it because, obviously you've got something to do and you want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think I eventually hit that point where I'm like, well, I'm not doing a video every day now, but that's okay. I think I had to program my brain to go, that's okay. Just stop, and
you've obviously you've smashed it. You've got, in terms of sheer volume of videos, you have done a lot more than a lot of other big people have, and it shows. Like I follow people, I follow yourself, I look at others, and I look for others for inspiration. Like if I see somebody who's not posted for ages, and then all of a sudden they're hammering it, I'm like, oh, they're so much better human being than me. And then I'm like, oh, I should probably start doing it. And then obviously now I've got the workshop and I've actually taken the time to learn about lighting and try and get things set up fancy. I'm trying to do it, and like I'm very conscious of the whole burnout thing. Like my problem, and I think I've spoken to this about it before, and I've said it on stream before, but I don't know whether I suppose I still have it, but I had bipolar, or I got diagnosed with bipolar in my early 20s after a massive breakdown. And it's taken me years to adapt to, like, when I'm obviously down, depressed, don't want to do anything, etc., very lows, and then obviously equally as bad as the highs. So I'd go through periods where I'd be, like, smashing out projects, probably not even for myself, I'd just be helping other people, and, like, this week I've started to do videos, and I now get conscious, I'm like, oh, I'm having too much fun, or I'm being too productive, and that means there'll be a crash. So I've had to start trying not to, even if I've got all the enthusiasm to do it, or I see someone do something, like, I watched your MWS videos when I got an MWS. Just, oh yeah, I'll get one of them. I could do some content on that. I like them. I'll paint it. And obviously you've sent me some parts which I'm going to test. And then I'm like, did I need an MWS? Did I just watch too many of James's videos? And then I'm like, you know what? I did watch too many of his videos, but I've got an MWS now, and I'll do something with it.
YouTube's dangerous because, again, you go down this rabbit hole of seeing someone doing something cool, and you're like, oh, I need that. Again, I hadn't built an AAP for a while, and then I went down a rabbit hole with that, and I was just like, I had the money to spend. Don't get me wrong, and I'm in a fortunate position where I'm quite, well off in my day job, but I was spending an extortionate amount of money on parts, and I think it was, again, the videos were driving me to do it.
I've seen some of your MWS builds. I know you are spending some money.
So, like, and I'm not doing it. I always stress to people, I'm not doing it as a flex. I'm not saying like I've got something better or more expensive than you. It's just this weird obsession where I did it. I hadn't had an MTW for a while, and they released the MTW9. And I was like, right, Kenny's got them in stock at Empire. I sent Kenny a message. I was like, right, I want an MTW9. And then I had this idea in my head. I was like, oh, it'd be a really cool idea for a video. Build the most expensive MTW9 ever, like maybe the most expensive MTW ever. So I sourced all these real parts for like weeks and weeks and weeks, perhaps months. Built this thing, flopped, and it was like, I think I calculated at the end something like $5,500. This rifle's worth. Ooh. Do you think I've even like took it out to a game? No. So I built it, I put it in the gun rack, and that's it. It's just sat there.
But can you put a price on happiness?
Well, I was happy when I was building it, and then I was like, oh crap, that was a lot of money. That was.
I've got you can't see it because my camera's blurred, but that case you can see standing up there has an SSG 24 in a genuine 1940s Carabiner 98 stock. It was expensive.
That was one of those kits that chap was doing. I forget his name.
Airsoft Bunker, I think, or something.
Yeah, he was doing conversions, wasn't he? Because again, I almost decided. I think I was talking to him and going, what's the lead time, this, that, and the other. I was like, no, you're not going to use it. just stop.
I have actually used it. I have taken. I think I took it to. I don't know if I might have taken it to the last Fireball I went to years ago, because I think they were running at like 1.1 joules on everything still, even with Sniper. So I think I took that. I just like the smell of it because it was all like revarnished and stuff, and oiled rather. And you open that, I could literally open that case, and I'm almost certain the girlfriend downstairs would be like, "You've opened that fucking gun again." Like, it's just
smell it.
It's just got a very distinct but very cool smell to it. But yeah, I've spent. I've got some expensive stuff, but you enjoy it at the time, and it's one of those. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't really go out and do anything. So airsoft and teching and gaming. Like, I've got a very, very expensive PC setup with dual flight sticks because I play Star Citizen a lot at the moment. And I thought, I don't do anything else. It's worth having these things. And like with you, the MWS and the MT9, like you enjoyed the process, right? So it wasn't a waste of money. You could have, that money would have been spunked on something else that you'd have enjoyed less.
Short-lived happiness.
Isn't it always though? Isn't it always?
Like I said, I got into this funk, and perhaps it was like a bit of like depression. I don't know. No energy, no enthusiasm. Didn't want to do anything. Probably lasted about 2 weeks. And
Did it happen after you got your credit card statement? Because if so, it could be depression mixed with
No,
realization.
funnily enough, it wasn't monetary related. I think it was just being, you know, obviously in an environment by yourself for a long time, and I don't know. I think sometimes your body just plays tricks on you, and you can't. I think you have to sit back and go, right, I can't control this. I'm just gonna have to let it happen. And
And
then I
it's
went
not.
and bought another motorbike. So it's
Yeah,
I get my enjoyment out of that now.
that's the thing. Why not? Like, you only live once. If you enjoy it, like, and if you're not spending your money, you're only going to give it to the tax man. So why not?
Well, that's
You've
the
earned
thing,
it.
isn't it?
Right, we run over a little bit, but is there any final things you want to say about the MDR? Like any free tips people can have, or any more about what you can do outside of the gearbox stuff? Like what other cool stuff can you do, and how's the rail coming?
Uh, it kind of got parked when I went down another MWS and AKM rabbit hole, but I have toyed with the idea of doing, and I've already started doing it. So you can get the service for like 80. There's also another add-on bit now where we can clearance. You can actually see it in that photo, the most leftward bearing slot. You've got the two fins,
Yeah,
and one of the fins on some of the MOSFETs can rub the MOSFET wire because they've pulled it out the PCB like too low. So that's an add-on now. People can have that done. I have toyed with the idea of, even though Silverback say you can't fit brushless motors, there's many people out there that have fitted brushless motors and still running them now. So I did start talking to, is it T238 or that brand? They do motors. They've sent me a motor. So I
yeah.
was T238, I think it is.
Mm.
So I got that to test on mine. Then I started sort of perhaps entertaining the idea of doing another stage. So there's always those that want to spend more, right? How can it be better? So I was thinking, right, well, let's try and find a really nice gear manufacturer, even if I just buy the gears at retail, mod them to fit the MDR, do that, and then have like a nice set of gears and maybe a brushless motor and go down that path, but haven't quite got there yet. I think I'll wait for the gearboxes to sort of maybe slow down a little bit before I start offering even more services, because it can get very messy very fast. So,
Especially if you've got the day job as well. Like obviously you've got to pace yourself, haven't you?
well, luckily the day job isn't too much of an issue, because obviously when I was in Bespoke, you live and breathe that company, and I'm sure you're aware. You go home, you don't switch off at night. Your brain is running in that company 24/7. I could never turn it off. So now, luckily, I have a day job where, I start in the morning, I work till like 5:30. Once that 5:30 turns around, my brain is just switched off. Like, I'm going home, and I don't have to worry about it till 9 o'clock the next morning, which is nice. It's much less stress. So yeah, I have to find my stress elsewhere nowadays. So it's back doing airsoft bits
And gearboxes as well, the most
and
stressful
gearboxes.
thing.
Yeah, I'd love to have more time for game. I didn't know you was such a massive gamer, to be honest, but I'd like to have more time for gaming. But I think with everything that I do, every now and again I'll sit in front of the computer and I'll go, right, I'm going to play something, and then after I've looked like down my Steam library a couple of times, I'm like, I can't be bothered, and I'll turn it off and I'll watch 5 hours worth of YouTube.
See, I go through phases. So obviously, because I used to stream on Twitch and on Facebook under SM Gaming. Still got them both active. I just don't use them. And I used to play Call of Duty with. I used to play with Hadron, a guy called Ryan, or the Bearded Airsofter, Paul Smith or Gunsmithy, and Kenny. We used to play Call of Duty for ages, and then that sort of fizzled out, and the game just got in a bad state. And then me and Kenny got heavily into Escape from Tarkov, like because Kenny lived with me for a bit, and he had his gaming laptop and I had mine, and so we just sit in the dining room just hammering that. And then the new Call of Duty come out, sort of got into that, and now I fell into Star Citizen because I like sci-fi stuff, and I just haven't touched any. The only game I touched recently was the new Star Wars, which is for anyone who's thinking about getting it. Now they've patched it and the performance is pretty good. The new Star Wars game is exceptional, like genuinely exceptional. Like I would happily pick it up and play it all again tomorrow. It was that good. Considering Jedi Fallen Order was a bit it was good but really repetitive. The new one is really good. So if you are looking for a game to play and you like,
That's nice to know. I did play the first one, so but I hadn't bought the second one just because obviously the reviews came out and stuff. But
the reviews are all performance related. The actual game, the story, the combat, the exploration, the openness, it is exceptional. I think they patched it about, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks ago. They did a patch for consoles and then PC, and I got it on the Xbox Series X, and yeah, I struggle to put it down. And normally I'm like, I'll play it for an hour and I'm like, I'm bored now. Whereas that I was there for days, literal days.
I bought into Star Citizen super early, like within the first year, I think it was. No, I didn't put loads of money into it. I only bought like a base thing just so I could get playing. But I haven't touched that for such a long time now. And I see all these updates. Is it any closer to getting?
It's never going to be released. Like it's never going to be
released.
So right now it's terrible. So they've just done. So I picked it up back in. I've got it a couple of years ago. Didn't have the time to invest to learn it, and then I re-picked it up back in February, and it was on 317, and everything kind of worked. Like you've got loads of space missions, you've got salvaging, you've got mining, you've got bounties, you've got FPS missions, smuggling. There's generally like quite a lot that you can do now, and obviously PvP if you want to do that. You can play the game sort of how you want. And then they released this thing called the persistent entity streaming, where everything for everyone in a particular group of servers or a shard existed and persisted. So if I was playing with a friend, I was playing with my friend Ryan, and I put a bottle on his ship months ago, and because he hasn't crashed that ship or claimed it and he's flying that same ship, that bottle is still where I put it on his ship. So for doing salvages, you can fly out, do a bounty, remember the location, take your ship back, get your salvage ship and fly back there, and that wreckage, that body will still be there. And then if you salvage it and go away, someone else could come back the next day and that ship might still be there. They've done a lot with it, but by doing that they absolutely broke it. And now we're on 318 and you can't even get a terminal to call your ship. So it's a bit of a pain, but I've just been practicing dogfighting with my friend Ryan because I bought 2 Gladiator and XT joysticks and pedals, and I've got a problem with it. Like now the workshop's very close to my house, I'm having to be like, I could just sit here or I could
choose between 2 things.
And then I see you putting out 1,000 videos, I'm like, fuck, let's go do some content. But no, if you've got Star Citizen, we'll play. Get on it.
I have got it. I wouldn't even know how to. I wouldn't know how to play it or where the downloader is. I probably have to go back on the website and re-download it. But yeah, I have got it.
But definitely, have you got joysticks?
No. No.
Do you want some?
But
I've got a spare set. Playing it on mouse and keyboard is not anyone that plays it like that. I tip my hat to you. But playing it with joysticks is like, I've got a curved monitor, which is what I game on, and then I've got 2 other monitors which I use for like Excel sheets or whatever I'm doing. And I've got the pedals and everything, and 2 joysticks. Just flying in space is great, right? It is just cool. And they've got the flight mechanics down to a T. Like, they have nailed that. And playing with 2 sticks just made it more immersive. I got better. They've somehow made doing the most simplest mundane task thoroughly enjoyable. Like, you can go somewhere to buy some drugs, to fly somewhere else, to sell some drugs, hoping that you don't get pirated by either a player or AI between doing it. And you could do that route 10 times and still have a smile on your face. They've just made it enjoyable. But I've got... Oh, crap. Here's where I yank it and something falls off. That's right.
Pull everything off the side.
I've got... Oh, Jesus. 2... Where's my camera? Thrustmasters.
So you need 2 joysticks?
You don't need to. If you really want to enjoy it, you do need to. But yeah, if you want to have a crack at using these for a while, you can. They're a left and a right hand. They're easy enough to set up. I can walk you through setting up. I've helped a number of friends get involved and get set up now.
I would be so willing to give that a go, but I would be the most noobiest noob that came
No,
in.
not at all. You'd once if you
I'm
don't.
quite interested in doing like the multi-crew stuff, like
Yeah, see, like
being in a group type thing. I wouldn't. I don't think it's something that I'd play on my own, but
see,
if a bunch of people are on.
on your own, because obviously you spend real money to get your ships, or you can buy a lot of the ships in the game. And obviously you've got to earn money, and you can do that by doing missions, and you do bounties, and they start at very low VLRTs, which are very low risk targets, and then you get to ERTs, which are extreme risk targets, which are like big multi-crewed ships, and they pay like 120k. So even on your own, doing bounties is really fun because they've now made it so that you're not just constantly going, oh, it's a high risk bounty, so it's just that one same ship every time. There's a variety of ships that it could be, and you could fight two people. You could have a group there. You could have a group there, but someone else could have the same mission. So it's very, even on your own, it's good. But me and my friend Ryan play as a pair, and we'll either do a bit of pirating, we might do some medics, we go and rescue people, we might just smuggle some drugs for some money. The game hasn't been working great at the moment because the servers have been crap, so we've just been doing duels, just 1v1s, just dogfighting, and even that's interesting. But yeah, no, if you're interested, get it downloaded, and I'll box them up and send them to you. As I said, that
I'll be your Igor that sits in the corner of your ship, just going, "Yes, master, give me something to do, master."
Like, man the turrets. But no, it is good. And there's definitely potential. Like, there's still, obviously they're regularly updating it. People in the chat are probably like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Yeah, probably. Just got a complete nerd on you.
But no, definitely get it. If you've already got the game package, then you've got the game package.
I couldn't tell you what it was. I think
if you got it back then, I imagine you probably got an Aurora or
I think it was the one that looks like the stealth fighter type thing. It was black and white.
That'd be a Titan, Avenger Titan.
Avenger, yeah.
Which is oddly a surprisingly good ship for a starter ship. It has the odd ability to carry a weapon as big as the ship.
Okay.
And people don't expect people to pilot it because it's a starter ship. So when you rock up and you're a reasonable pilot, you can catch a lot of people off guard.
Well, perhaps you should do a stream of playing that, and you can all laugh at my expense of getting absolutely everything wrong.
Yeah, I do want to do some more social stuff, like gaming. Obviously, I've got my gaming channel, so it'd be good to get on there. But a lot of airsofters do game, so it would be good. And I've got the Discord where we do have some game nights on there every now and then with a few people that follow me on Instagram that have found the Discord. But yeah, I'm up for doing it. It's always good to socialise, and it's a good time to chat about stuff as well. Like, you can be there just absolutely ruin someone else's day while talking about a project. And obviously you're all like, obviously I have private channels, so if I'm on there with like Steve or something, because I'm trying to get Steve into it, he's resisting, but we'll get him. I'll get him.
You'll have an organisation before you know it.
Hopefully, it's the dream. It is. I've probably, even when the game doesn't work, it doesn't annoy me. Not like Call of Duty annoys me. Call of Duty takes years to like this. You're just like, I'm so frustrated because I want to enjoy it because I like playing it. Whereas Call of Duty, you're like, I want to enjoy it, but everyone's ruining my fucking day.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of thing, isn't it? But right, let's call it a night. But it was absolutely a pleasure to chat.
Yeah, as always.
And I'll get to testing those bits. Obviously, if you can carry on and give me some feedback on the AEG rubbers you've got, because I know a lot of people are interested in them.
Well, now you've mentioned it, I'm going to shove one in the MDR.
I don't know whether it will work, because the MDR uses weird flat-ended lips, whereas most AEGs are tapered-ended, which is what mine is. But it might be a small enough of a taper to fit. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if it works.
Well, the arm for the AKM is practically built around your VSR style rubbers, so that'll be nice when that's ready. I know James has some really good results out of his AKM with your Flamingo, so
yeah, I've seen him get some cracking shots. I was very tempted. I kind of went into Kenny's, and I thought I'm gonna get something today, and it was either the MWS because I'd been watching your stuff and we'd been talking about them, and I'd had one before that which I never got rid of, but then I did see the AKX and sort of manhandle one of them, they are a lovely bit of kit. Like,
Yeah.
I think people if someone's bought one without ever having picked it up, they're going to be very surprised by how heavy it is, for how small it is as well.
Well, the AKX is obviously the version where you don't have to do a lot to it. Where I bought the original AKM, where I had to change pretty much every single part on it to get it to the way I wanted it. But yeah, it's everything the MWS is and more. You've just got to like an AK.
Yeah, I do like the AKs. I like modern looking. I know a lot of people are like purists and they like old tatty Woodstock. I like Zenico. Like, I like M-Lock. I think modern AKs look the part.
Oh, the uproar that happened when I put an M4 stock on the back of it, which, again, the only reason I did it is because I do run a lot of MWSs and I'm used to that. Obviously, I use the CTR stocks, the real ones, and going to the AKM stock, it didn't make sense. So I was like, well, how do I make this rifle familiar? It needs to be familiar where I'm going to use it. It needs to be comfortable. So that's why I sacrificed the what do you call it? The heritage of the AK to put an M4 part on it. But
yeah, they are lovely. Right.
Which, if you've got an MWS now, I've got a ton of spare MWS mags, so perhaps I shall send you some too. I've got like 2 cases worth of MWS mags.
That is a lot of mags. Yeah, they come and go in batches, don't they? Sometimes that you can go and get 4 or 5 and not a problem. Other times they're just like the barren for months. So I
think I've got like 15 or 16 or something like that. There's a lot, so I don't need that many magazines. So if you want some, I'll send some your way.
I'll have to ping you a message when we're done. But yeah, for now, let's end the stream there. I think we did a lot of chatting about what we intended to and a lot of chatting about what we didn't. But it's always good to chat. And thank you for everyone that joined. If you're interested in Jaeger's stuff, he has got Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, etc., which you should find in the post for the event because I did tag him in it. But yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed it. And James, thank you again for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And I will get you on Star Citizen.
Yes.
But for now, guys, thank you everyone.
Bye.
I'll speak to you later.